All right, what is up? So, I want to welcome you to the Great Reject, which is all of us that are in the know rejecting the Great Reset. And that's what this video is about. Actually, this video is about me wanting to encourage you to listen to or watch this interview between Dr. Mercola and Alex Jones. But also, I want to emphasize the importance of focusing on the most important things, which is your personal health, which includes animal based nutrition, ancestral based health practices, and then also simplifying your life to the best of your abilities. And that's probably going to be an ongoing process. But what do I mean by that? I mean self-reliance, preparedness, having some kind of a savings plan, and then simplifying, minimizing, optimizing your possessions and your processes. Because what's happening is happening faster and faster. Okay. Now, before I get into what might be considered a little bit controversial, I want to say, first of all, don't throw the bacon out with the bacon grease. If I sound crazy with some of this stuff, but I'm not, but if I do sound crazy to you, just stay with me. Okay. Also, I want to say thank you for your support. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for your financial support. Okay. I'm committed to you. I'm committed to continuing to share useful, powerful information. And I'm asking you, if you have the ability, stay with me. Stay with me in this community, because this community is where we can share, is where we can be open, we can be vulnerable, and this is where I'm going to communicate the most important information that I find, okay, including what I'm about to go through here. All right, now, you can go ahead and watch or listen to the interview between Dr. Mercola and Alex Jones, but I want to highlight some points here. First of all, I've been a rebel for as long as I can remember. I've always been a rebel. I've always questioned the mainstream narrative. I've always liked to break the rules. I've always liked to go against what everyone else is doing. I can't stand doing what everyone else is doing. I hate what's mainstream for the most part, right? And I've realized that that's actually a good trait. It's good to be skeptical. It's good to be somewhat resistance based, because if you're doing that with the right perspective, it allows you to see the truth. And therefore, you can see other possibilities, creative solutions. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I'm thankful to be awake and aware and to have noticed the things that I have. And some of the things I'm going to talk about here in a second, 10 years ago, my 10-year ago self would have thought I was freaking crazy. But I'm not. Because the more I learn about this stuff, the more I understand that what I see is the truth. And then it gets confirmed by people like Dr. McCullough. Now, if you haven't heard of Alex Jones, if you've heard of him in the mainstream media, it's probably a negative light, because he's been on trial for some different things and he's been censored. He was censored before McCullough was censored. But I tell you what, I followed him for a long time. He's the founder and creator of InfoWars. And I'm telling you, like, this guy, I align with a lot of what he says. And he has predicted a lot of things that have come to fruition, and not because he's some kind of a prophet, but because he's educated on how the systems of the world work, these systems that have been in place for a very, very long time. And so now he's being interviewed by Dr. Mercola. I don't feel so freaking crazy thinking that a lot of what he puts out is makes sense, because Mercola is super reputable. There's a battle for the control of the planet, right? There is a battle for having a worldwide planetary government and a worldwide takeover. And it's been happening for a while. I liken this to being in the movie Star Wars. Like, we are part of the rebellion and we're fighting against the Empire, okay? And it literally is like that. And now, like they say in this video, we have the battle plans to the Death Star. And it's up to us to stand up against the Empire. I was trying to think about how to communicate the way that I see things with, I hate to use the elites, but I guess that's a really good word. The elites, the people in power, the people have a lot of influence, right? So if you think about the people at the top of this thing that have the most money, the most power, the most influence, the population of this planet continues to grow. And a lot of people say that we've exceeded the carrying capacity of this planet for human beings. And then, at the same time, resources are continually dwindling. And so if you're at the top of this thing, or you feel like you're at the top of this thing, and you see that happening, what do you do about it? And add to that, maybe just imagine being at the top of this thing and feeling like you're part of a family that has a very special bloodline, and you've been raised to think that your family and your bloodline or your community or your people or your race is superior to everyone else. How would that influence the way that you make decisions? You probably want to have control. You want to have as much control as possible. And you probably want to breed out people that you don't think are as superior as you or are inferior to you. And then you think about people at the top of this thing. How do they do this, right? As an elite person with, again, just ungodly amounts of money and ungodly amounts of power and influence. At the top of this thing, like, you probably have a lot of land, you have a lot of resources, you have protection for those things, and you have a lot of space. Like, you're not in crowded living conditions and in close proximity with a lot of other people, except for those people that are very, very close to you. What they would want, what these people would probably want for the people that are beneath them to some degree, and we've seen this play out over different civilizations all over history. You want those people to rent, pay you homage, also known as taxation, right? And you want them to have relatively meager living conditions. And you want to make them relatively weaker and or sicker and or dependent on the system that you're providing them. You may even get into, again, if you see the population is just getting like out of control and resources are dwindling, you probably want to have some kind of fertility controls in place. And then you probably want to start to hoard the most nutritious foods for yourself and offer less nutritious things to this subordinate population. And you probably have different arguments for doing that to make them not feel so bad about consuming these things that actually aren't that great for them. And then you probably want to buy up as much land as you can so that there's less land for other people to buy and more land for you to rent to those people. And then you probably want to give these people comforts and distraction to keep them from realizing what the heck is going on. I feel like that sounds like exactly the world that we're living in right now. Look at our food supply. It's toxic, and I think it's toxic by design. Like, you couldn't mess it up any worse than it is unless it was intentional. Look at our fertility rates. Look at our disease and our medical system. It's not a medical system that's designed to get people better. It's designed to continually keep someone in the sick care system until they don't have any money left and they're on their dying deathbed. And then look at all the BS around things like climate change, right? What is climate change really doing? It's moving people away from fossil fuels without any alternatives for other energy sources. And it's moving them away from the most nutritious foods on the planet, which are animal foods. So these higher ups, these elites, whatever the heck you want to call these people, they're looking for some kind of a controlled demolition of the current system because the current system can't sustain the planet. And then in that controlled demolition, they want to move everyone over to a new system, right? And this is what is being called the Great Reset. Think about what they would need to have in place to do that. They need a lot of surveillance. Well, they have surveillance. After 9/11, we have unprecedented surveillance that would be unconstitutional, but the Patriot Act made it something that was legal. How else would you facilitate this controlled demolition of the current system? Well, you'd have to have some kind of depopulation maneuvers in place. Well, if we got a toxic food supply, if we pull away the most nutritious foods, we start to see fertility rates or infertility rates increase. And then if you can create some kind of a worldwide medication that can have negative impacts on health and fertility, that's a big win. By the way, Bill Gates, one of the biggest proponents for vaccines, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation used to be called the Foundation for Population Control. And I'm not knocking all vaccines, and I'm not knocking you if you got the vaccine. I might have gotten the vaccine. But I think this current vaccine, most of us will agree, it didn't work out so well, or at least it didn't work out the way that it was sold to us. Now, other things they can use for this controlled demolition of the current system is future pandemics and outbreaks, cyber attacks, and then attacks on the electrical system or the power grids. And I love how Alex Jones in this interview talks about how you know what's coming because they talk about it before it happens. 9/11, before 9/11 happened, they had practice scenarios of terrorist planes running into the World Trade Center towers. Before COVID, they had practice worldwide scenarios of a coronavirus world pandemic. And they had vaccines almost on standby for when COVID hit. And those are just a couple of examples. Now there's a lot of talk about cyber attacks and cyber attacks from Russia. And you can just feel the squeeze around energy. It's palpable because energy is probably one of the greatest resources, if not the greatest resource that we have that's dwindling, that we all need access to. This entire modern civilization is based off of energy, fossil fuels, and electricity. So as they're pulling away fossil fuels without giving us any alternatives for other energy, you can imagine how hitting the electrical system through a quote unquote cyber attack or terrorist cyber attack or knocking out a part of the electrical grid or something like that, how that could put people into some kind of a panic, right? So what's happening is fuel systems are being cut off with no alternatives. The currency is being devalued. Land is being bought up. Animal foods, the most nutritious foods on the planet, are being disincentivized. And then you throw in, at the same time, some kind of a disaster or catastrophe. And then what happens is they come in to save the day with the solution. And the solution could be universal income, central bank digital currency. Maybe a solution they propose is you giving up foods for the sake of the planet and eating suboptimal foods, sacrificing yourself for the good of the planet. Meanwhile, they're hoarding all the good food and coming in and allowing us to rent at a relatively small rate, but then not allowing us to own anything, and eventually moving into some kind of a world ID. And we've seen this with vaccine passports, central bank digital currency that's coming out, social credit score system, carbon tax, and on and on. And how do we know all this stuff is happening? Because people have seen this coming, they've been predicting it, and it's happening now in real time, and it's happening really fast. And also, how do we know? Because people that have a lot of money that are in the know are building bunkers and buying land in faraway places. They're buying self-sufficient yachts and floating cities so that whatever happens in the mainland in these crowded areas isn't going to affect those people. Now, this isn't meant to be all doom and gloom. This is the reality of the situation. What I want is for you to be awake and aware to what's happening so that you have leverage to do what it is that you need to do. And what you need to focus on is your personal health, emphasizing protein and animal-based nutrition, ancestral-based health practices, getting outside, getting sun, having some functional fitness in place, focusing on resistance training, making yourself strong and capable, prioritizing your sleep, all the things that we talk about, but also simplifying life, which includes preparedness, having your 14 days worth of shelter-in-place supplies, having some savings, cultivating a community and being a part of this community here, simplifying and minimizing your possessions and your processes, and getting out of the convenience mindset. You look at this modern world, especially these compact cities, you look around you, there's electronics and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi everywhere. We're swimming in filth, and it's making us weak. And so just being aware of that, the opportunity here is that if you can focus on these things now and prepare now, then as these things unfold, you won't be affected as much. And I promise to share with you solutions as I come across them, okay? Thank you for listening. I love you guys. Please watch or listen to this interview between Dr. McCullough and Alex Jones.